Okay, in this video I am going to talk you through the different selection methods in Photoshop. So, we're going to start hard and we're going to move to easy. So you might think, what's the point in learning selection methods that are hard? And it is because selecting things is a bit of an unknown task. You never quite know how easy or hard selecting something is going to be. When an object doesn't have clear, defined or contrasting edges, some of the easier methods don't work. And so I want to teach you the methods that are maybe a bit more challenging, but that you can use to select anything before I teach you the easy versions. Okay, so I've deliberately picked this image, which is nice and contrasting, that's really easy to select things for you in this particular instance, but obviously not everything is as easy. So we're going to get started. I'm going to start off by zooming in, Command plus or Control plus, and I'm going to use my space bar on the keyboard to move around with my hand tool. So I have got all of my selection tools just up here, and then I've also got my move tool, which is important. We're going to use that too. So I've got a range of selection tools here: magic wand, quick select, object select. I've got my lasso tool, I've got my polygonal lasso, and I've got my magnetic lasso. So the magnetic lasso is the most reliable but kind of tricky to use. You'll be able to use it to select any object in any scenario. So I'm going to click on the edge and it's sticky. Okay, I'm going to click, I'm going to drag it, trace it along this line, and every now and again, and I think if in doubt, you're going to just do lots and lots of little clicks and trace around the edge. When you try and trace it like this, it gets out of hand. Okay, so you need to do little clicks. If you are in a position like me where it's gotten out of hand, if you press backspace, it will delete those anchor points, which are the little square boxes, until you're back to a place that is manageable. So I would like you, first of all, and you can pause this video now, to, again, I've got a little bit out of hand, so I can use the space bar to move around. I would like you guys to select the whole of the person using this technique. You're going to go all the way around. Now, that would be really boring for you guys to watch. So I'm just going to pretend I've gone around all of the rest of it. And remember, I've been doing this for probably more years than I'm going to tell you actually. So you might get frustrated and think, oh my God, it looks so easy on the video. Remember, that's because I've had a lot of practice. So if you're finding this tricky, it is just practice. So if you've gone around the whole of the person and you're coming to the section here where you are meeting your original anchor point, what you will be able to see is when I hover over, can you see a little circle appears? That means that I've created a whole circle. And once I link that circle up, it will turn into marching ants. We call this line, this kind of sort of dotted line, we call it marching ants. So marching ants indicates the selection. So I've created that selection. Okay, so one of the other top tips for the before you start the magnetic lasso tool is if you accidentally do a double click. Okay, so if I was to draw around something and I accidentally double click, it will automatically join up my start and end point no matter where I'm at. So please try to avoid doing an accidental double click, because it will simply give you that selection as a whole, and you'd have to start again. Right, so I have got my marching ants, I've got my selection, okay, here. And that is one way that I can select this woman. Okay, so screenshot that, do that. And now we're going to move on to other selection methods. So in order to deselect, I can either go to select and I can go to deselect, or I can use the keyboard shortcut Command D. Lovely, so that is the first selection method. I'm going to show you a couple of others. We've got the lasso tool, which is freehand. You can just draw and that'll create a selection. I'm not going to be able to do that or use that tool to draw accurately around this person. I've also got my polygonal lasso, which just draws straight lines. Again, I'm not going to be able to use this selection method to draw around this person, but it's worth being aware of. Again, when I join it up, it gives me that circle, and then I get my marching ants. Command D to deselect. So I'd like you to have a play with those, and again, screenshot and put them into your PowerPoint. Okay, so the next selection tool I want to bring your attention to is the quick selection tool. So the quick selection tool is, and I'm going to zoom out, Command minus, a selection tool that allows me to drag and drop with a brush and add things in fairly quickly, like so. If you want to subtract something, you've accidentally added a bit and you're like, oh, I don't want that in the selection, you can go to minus and you can deselect just here. So I'd like you to use the quick selection tool, and I would like you to select the woman, screenshot, and then come back to this video. Okay, great. So we have used the magnetic lasso, we've used polygonal and the plain lasso tool. We've now used the quick select tool as well. We also have object selection. So I can select an object simply by clicking on that object. Okay, so here it is selecting the hair or the trousers. Again, I can add to the selection. So this button here will add to the selection. This will subtract from the selection. So if I want to add extra objects, I can do that. Through this object selection. I don't tend to use the object selection very often, and you can see why as I zoom into the face. So it's treated the eyes, the eyebrows, the mouth as separate objects, which obviously isn't really what I want, and that can often happen with this tool, making it less accurate. So it's something to bear in mind. But again, I'd like you to select using the object selection tool just to get a bit of a feel for it. Okay, so I've selected using that tool, and now I'm going to go Command D to deselect. So I can also select using the select section, and I can select the subject. So this is automatically using AI selected the subject. Great, I haven't really had to do anything. So again, I'd like you to do that, and you can screenshot this and put it into your PowerPoint. Okay, so I also have a few other bits and pieces. So we talked about the subject, which is useful. I can select the sky, which is also very useful. There we go, sky is selected, Command D. For the moment though, I'm going to select the subject. So once I've selected an object, I can then do all sorts of different things with it. Okay, for instance. In this instance though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste it. So I'm going to go edit copy, edit paste. And you can now see that I've got a separate object, a separate layer. But as I zoom in, you guys can sort of see that the edge isn't great because it's still got a little layer of blue in it. If I had selected this object using the magnetic lasso, you might find that the edge is a bit rough, which you wouldn't necessarily want. Okay, so it's worth bearing that in mind. So I'm going to get rid of this layer. I'm going to go back to my background. I'm going to go back to select subject. And now I'm going to go back to select, and I'm going to go select and mask. So select and mask allows you to modify a selection to make it a bit more accurate. So we had that kind of blue haze around, which meant that if I was going to put this on a different background, it would look a bit strange. So one of the things I can do is change the view so I can look at it. I use the overlay, that's kind of my preference. You can use marching ants. You can have it on black. Again, that won't necessarily tell you if it's the right position, but it will tell you like if it's smooth or not. You can have it on white and you can increase the opacity. That's kind of quite useful as well, because we can really clearly see that blue edge. So there's a range of different things I can do to my selection. I can make the edge contracted, and in that instance, that's what I would do here. In order to get rid of that blue line, shifting the edge has gotten rid of that blue haze. You can see it there, and now it's reduced. So I would contract. We can see around the hair, I might want to smooth the selection a little bit. Okay. There are other things that we can do. We can make the selection more contrasty. Again, you can see the edge there is becoming harder. I can feather the selection, which makes the edge much softer. Again, I probably don't want to do that in this case. I could click and show original, on and off. Useful to compare and contrast. So, when I make a selection, I'm always going to go in and modify and refine that selection. I'm not going to always be able to just use one selection method. So for instance here, can you see that the knee hasn't actually been brought as part of that selection? So that quick selection didn't work as well as I'd hoped. So that's the reason why I need to be able to know a range of different tools in order to select effectively. So I would like you to experiment with all of these different methods. I'd like to see screenshots of each of the different methods along with annotations about each of the different methods in your PowerPoints.